Spit it out, Noah. Right now. I tore the clear plastic bundle from my son's hand so hard that the little yellow dump truck beside him rolled off the coffee table. A bite-sized peanut candy sat inside the wrapper, unmarked and half-crushed, with sugar already dusting Noah's lower lip. Across the room, my husband, Daniel, went white beside the birthday cake. That's peanut marzipan, I said. My voice barely sounded human. Vanessa gave our son peanuts. Noah had a severe peanut allergy. Everyone in Daniel's family knew it. Vanessa knew better than anyone because 2 months earlier she had mocked the laminated allergy plan on our refrigerator and joked that peanuts needed security clearance in our house. My sister-in-law lifted her chin. Her expensive earrings caught the afternoon light from the windows overlooking Lake Arrowhead. Oh, Claire, stop performing. He probably wasn't even going to eat it. You hid it in an unlabeled bag under the toy you handed him. It was a treat. If your child puts everything in his mouth, that isn't my fault. Noah began to cry against my chest. Daniel looked first at his sister and then at our 6-year-old son. I watched the last excuse die on my husband's face. It did not happen dramatically. His shoulders simply dropped, as if some invisible weight he had carried since childhood had finally become too heavy. Everything had started with a house. 3 months earlier, we had moved from our cramped apartment in Pasadena to the lake property Daniel's father, Walter Mercer, left him when he died. Daniel was a pediatrician at a community clinic in San Bernardino. I designed brand identities from home, usually after Noah went to sleep. For 9 years we had saved for a place with a yard, telling ourselves that one day our son would have trees to climb and a sidewalk where he could ride a bike without circling parked cars. The Mercer Lake House felt like a gift too large to trust. Pale stone wrapped around the lower level. Cedar beams crossed a living room with windows nearly 2 stories high. A wooden deck stepped down toward a narrow dock where Noah could spend an hour throwing pebbles and inventing names for the ripples. Walter had built most of it when Daniel was a teenager. He had always said the lake taught impatient people to wait. Our peace lasted 2 days. Vanessa arrived first in a cream SUV, wearing pointed boots that had never met mud and carrying no housewarming gift. She was a real estate broker who evaluated every room as if a photographer were coming at noon. Dad got carried away with you, little brother, she said, running one manicured finger along the granite island. A property like this for 3 people is ridiculous. Daniel's younger sister, Brooke, arrived 10 minutes later. She had recently divorced and possessed a remarkable ability to cry whenever money entered a conversation. She stood before the fireplace and sighed. It must be nice when some people are handed a place to start over. Their mother, Margaret, came in last, holding a casserole and a wounded smile. Your father thought Daniel would keep the family together. I don't think he meant for him to keep everything. That sentence became the background noise of our new life. If I served a good bottle of wine, I was showing off with family money. If Noah left blocks on the rug, I was disrespecting Walter's home. If Daniel paid for a leaking roof, Vanessa asked why he was wasting everyone's inheritance, without a vote. They had each received money and other assets under Walter's estate plan, but the lake house was the thing they could see, photograph, and resent. I tried to tell Daniel that grief did not explain the precision of their cruelty. He would rub the bridge of his nose and ask for time. Dad's death rearranged everything, he said. They're angry. It will settle down. Daniel was not weak. I need to make that clear. He could tell frightened parents the truth about a child's diagnosis without abandoning kindness. He could hold a screaming toddler still for stitches and make the child believe they were a team. But with his mother and sisters, kindness became a reflex they knew how to trigger. Walter had worked long hours, Margaret avoided conflict, and Daniel had been the quiet middle child who restored peace. If Vanessa smashed a lamp, Daniel cleaned the glass. If Brooke spent her tuition money, Daniel gave up a summer trip. The family called him dependable. What they meant was available. At our first dinner in the house, Vanessa snatched a cracker from Noah's hand. Ask first, little piglet. Not everything you see belongs to you. Noah lowered his eyes. I put the cracker back on his plate and told her never to speak to him that way. Vanessa laughed as if I had delivered a punchline. Daniel took her outside. 10 minutes later, he returned alone and said she had apologized to him. She didn't insult you, I said. She insulted Noah. I know. I told her. Then why didn't she apologize to him? Daniel stared at his hands. I'll handle it. I loved him enough to understand what he was fighting, but I loved our son too much to pretend understanding was protection. The pressure grew through 100 small invasions. Vanessa began bringing prospective buyers to the end of our driveway and claiming they were friends who wanted to see the lake. Brooke asked if she could move into the guest room for 2 weeks, then arrived with 7 plastic bins and a cat Daniel had never agreed to house. Margaret used the old key Walter had given her and entered while I was on a video call with a client. When I changed the locks, all three women treated it as proof that I was isolating Daniel. They created a family group chat without me. Daniel showed me the messages because he had stopped answering them. Vanessa posted estimates of the property's market value. Brooke sent apartment listings and said a sale could save her from starting life with nothing. Margaret wrote, "Your father would hate seeing money divide you," without once asking why division always meant Daniel surrendering what was his. On a rainy Thursday, I found Vanessa in Walter's study photographing tax records. She claimed Margaret needed copies. When I asked her to leave, she smiled and said, "You're temporary here, Claire. The deed may have Daniel's name on it, but blood remembers what belongs to blood. I'm Daniel's wife. Noah is his son. We are his blood too. You know what I mean." I did. She meant that marriage could be dismissed, children could be frightened, and boundaries could be recast as betrayal if the prize was valuable enough. Christmas gave them their first useful weapon. They arrived without asking. Vanessa brought her 12-year-old son, Mason, who was tall for his age and watched his mother before every act of meanness, as if waiting for permission. Noah had spent weeks building a cardboard space station in the corner of the den. Mason kicked through it on his way to the game console. When Noah cried, Vanessa smiled. That's how he learns material things don't last. I knelt beside the crushed tubes and silver-painted boxes. Noah whispered, "Did I make it too big?" The question hurt more than the destruction. He had already learned to search himself for the reason someone else chose to hurt him. Dinner was worse. Vanessa carried the food to the deck because she wanted sunset pictures. She piled ribs and chicken wings onto Mason's plate, then set salad in front of Noah. My son reached for one wing. Vanessa slapped his fingers. "Don't grab like a starving animal. You don't get to devour what belongs to other people." I slapped her. The sound stopped every conversation. I am not proud of it. I wish I had taken Noah inside, called the police when she refused to leave, or chosen any response that did not give her the image she wanted. But I saw my child clutching his red fingers and my body moved before judgment caught up. Vanessa screamed. Brooke raised her phone only after my hand was still in the air. Daniel saw Noah's hand and shoved the cold portable grill away from the child. It crashed onto the deck. Brooke's 14-second clip captured me with my arm raised and Daniel beside an overturned grill. It omitted the slap to Noah, the words that caused it, and the long minutes of taunting before it. That night, Vanessa sent the clip to relatives, neighbors, and several people from Daniel's clinic. Her caption read, "We are terrified for Noah. He lives with violence and an unstable mother." Daniel sat at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning, staring at the video as though repetition might reveal a version in which his sisters still loved him. He did not doubt me. The devastation came from finally considering that they might deliberately use his child to wound him. "I want to fix this without losing everyone," he said. "And what do we lose while you try?" He looked toward the hallway where Noah slept. I know. But he did not know yet. Not completely. For Daniel's sake, I agreed to invite them to Noah's birthday 3 weeks later. It would be the last chance, held during daylight with 2 friends from school and their parents present. We locked Walter's study. I packed Noah's epinephrine injectors in the deck bag and reviewed the allergy rules with the caterer. Daniel told his family in writing, "No cruelty, no discussion of the estate, no taking Noah near the dock without us." They arrived gentle and polished. Vanessa hugged me. Brooke brought balloons. Margaret read Noah a card about family. For nearly 2 hours they performed affection so convincingly that I wondered whether I had become incapable of accepting peace. Then I heard water strike water. Noah was in the lake. Daniel ran before anyone else moved. He vaulted the low rail and jumped from the dock fully dressed. The water was near freezing. By the time he lifted Noah onto the boards, our son was coughing, shaking, and gripping Daniel's collar with both fists. "I didn't fall, Daddy," he sobbed. "Mason pushed me because his mom said I needed to learn." Mason stood 8 feet away, staring at his shoes. Vanessa did not rush to Noah. She held her phone chest high, filming. "It was an accident," she said. Brooke called Noah dramatic. Margaret said boys played rough. One of the school parents wrapped Noah in a blanket and looked at them with open disgust. Daniel's voice changed. "Get off our property." Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me? All of you? Now?" For the first time, she seemed uncertain. Then she began shouting about my influence, but Daniel did not argue. He stood between his family and the house while I carried Noah inside. We changed him, warmed him, checked his breathing, and sat with him until the shaking stopped. Only then did we open the gifts, hoping normal activity might settle him. Beneath the yellow dump truck from Vanessa, Noah found the clear packet of peanut candy. Now, with the candy on the floor between us, Daniel picked up the wrapper using a paper towel. He held it like evidence from the death of his childhood. "The lake wasn't an accident," he said. They came for the house, and they used our son to break me. Vanessa gave a short laugh. Listen to yourself. Daniel walked to the front door and opened it. If you are still here in 30 seconds, I'm calling the sheriff. Margaret began to cry. Brooke said he was choosing me over family. Vanessa did not move until Daniel took out his phone and entered 911. Then she swept past him, shoulder rigid, her perfume lingering after the door closed. Noah slept between us that night. Every few hours Daniel woke and touched the center of his back to feel him breathing. Near dawn, he whispered, I'm sorry. I kept asking you to be patient with people who were counting on my patience. What matters is what we do now. At 8:05, we called Samuel Reed, the estate attorney who had handled Walter's trust. I did not talk about revenge. I listed facts, the edited video, the trespassing, the photographs of records, the push into the lake, the peanut candy, and the repeated demands to sell. Samuel asked us to come that afternoon and bring everything. His office occupied the second floor of a brick building in Redlands, above a bakery that made the hallway smell like cinnamon. Daniel told the story without interruption. When he finished, Samuel removed a sealed folder from a fireproof cabinet. Your father was afraid of this, he said. Inside was an amendment to the family trust and a handwritten letter from Walter. The handwriting leaned hard to the right, the way it did on birthday cards. Walter wrote that Vanessa had pressured him to invest in 2 debt-heavy developments by hiding liens and overstating pre-sales. Brooke had repeatedly used emergencies, breakups, and medical scares to extract money, several of which he later learned were exaggerated. He loved his daughters, he wrote, but no longer trusted their hunger. I leave the lake house to Daniel because he is the only one who knows how to care for something without turning love into a bill. If they pressure him to surrender it, let this letter remind him that protecting his wife and son is not betrayal. Daniel cried without sound. One tear landed on the edge of the letter, and he wiped it away as if apologizing to his father. I thought Dad wanted me to keep us together. He wanted them to stop emptying you, Samuel said. Then came the first reversal. The house was not simply a gift under an ordinary will. It sat inside a protective trust. Any documented attempt by Walter's other beneficiaries to obtain the property through coercion, harassment, threats, or misuse of a minor would permanently bar them from discretionary benefits that remained. Walter had not left them a negotiation. He had left them a test of character. Samuel warned us that satisfying our anger was not the same as building a record. We needed clean evidence. He photographed the wrapper, copied the videos, and told us to save every message without baiting anyone. We took the candy to Noah's allergist, who documented that the ingredients posed a potentially life-threatening risk. We installed additional cameras, changed every access code, and notified Noah's school that no Mercer relative could pick him up. That evening I searched public property and court records. Vanessa's brokerage license was active, but 2 development companies tied to her faced liens and lender claims. Brooke's former husband had stopped paying for the condo after their divorce settlement, and eviction proceedings had begun. Their sudden devotion to family had a number behind it. A local agent had estimated our property at $2.4 million. They don't want a family home, I told Daniel. They want liquidity. He studied the lake through the window. I knew they needed money. I didn't want to know what they would do for it. They struck first the next morning. A county child welfare investigator arrived at our door following an anonymous report of violent parents, a terrified child, unsecured weapons, and a dangerous waterfront home. Even though I knew we had done nothing wrong, my hands shook when I let her in. There is a particular terror in watching a stranger examine your child's bed while knowing a lie brought her there. The investigator, Ms. Alvarez, inspected the locked medicine cabinet, smoke detectors, fenced deck gate, and pantry labels. She spoke to Noah privately at the dining table while Daniel and I waited outside. Through the glass, I watched my son demonstrate how his toy astronaut could survive a moonstorm. He did not look terrified. He looked 6. Before leaving, Ms. Alvarez said, "Your son appears loved, verbal, and appropriately attached to both of you. Keep every message." Reports like this are sometimes used as harassment. The case was closed after follow-up, but the purpose had never been to win. It was to make us imagine losing Noah. Daniel stopped grieving the version of his sisters he wanted that day. Their second attack came at his clinic. Brooke arrived during the Monday morning rush carrying a framed family photograph. She told the receptionist that Daniel was under the control of a violent wife, that I had isolated him from his mother, and that an emotionally unstable man should not treat children. Parents in the waiting room heard her. A medical assistant recorded part of the scene after Brooke refused to leave. Security escorted her out while she shouted that the clinic would regret protecting an abuser. Daniel came home with the incident report folded in his pocket. He placed it beside the closed child welfare finding. Walter's letter, and a still image from the dock camera. Enough, he said. Samuel sent a formal cease and desist notice, no direct contact, no public claims about Noah, no approach to the school or clinic, and no entry onto the property. Vanessa answered from her personal number 17 minutes after receiving it. Transfer the house to Mom and this all ends. We'll give you your family back. Daniel showed me the message. His hand was steady. They finally said it in writing. Samuel proposed one controlled meeting at the lake house. We would tell the women Daniel was willing to hear a plan to restore peace. Every room involved would be covered by visible security cameras. Samuel would be present. Noah would spend the afternoon with my sister in Pasadena. I hated bringing them back into the house, but I understood the reason. Threats thrive in implication. Vanessa believed Daniel's guilt was stronger than his boundaries, and she might explain the bargain if she thought she had won. She accepted in less than 5 minutes. On Sunday, Vanessa arrived with Margaret, Brooke, and a leather folder containing a prepared deed transfer. She wore a white suit, an extraordinary choice for a family reconciliation and a perfect choice for a closing. Brooke kept glancing at the folder. Margaret held her purse in both hands. Vanessa sat across from us and smiled. Sign the house to Mom. She can decide what is fair. After that, maybe we can forget your wife's violence and stop worrying about Noah. What happens if I don't? Daniel asked. Vanessa's smile thinned. Do you really want every patient, teacher, and judge in California wondering what happens behind these walls? Daniel picked up the pen. Before I sign anything, there's something Dad wanted you to hear. Samuel entered from Walter's study carrying the sealed folder. Vanessa's expression changed so quickly it felt like a light switching off. Why is he here? To carry out Dad's final instructions, Daniel said. Brooke's eyes filled on command. Daniel, this was supposed to be family. My son is family, he said. You put him in danger. I placed a tablet on the table. First, I played the exterior camera footage from the dock. It showed Mason pause, look toward Vanessa, and shove Noah between the shoulder blades. It showed Vanessa raise her phone before Daniel hit the water. She did not run. She did not reach for a life ring. She framed the shot. Then I displayed the unlabeled candy and the allergist's report. Finally, I opened a message Vanessa had mistakenly copied to an old tablet still linked to the family account. We had discovered it while preserving Daniel's messages. If the kid gets scared enough, Claire will want to leave. Daniel caves when he thinks everyone is suffering because of him. Margaret covered her mouth. Tell me you didn't write that. They're twisting everything, Vanessa said. It was a joke. Daniel struck his palm against the table. It was the first time in 11 years I had seen him make violence out of sound. My son is not a joke. Samuel read Walter's letter aloud, including the failed developments, Brooke's manipulations, and his fear that they would exploit Daniel's goodness to take what he meant to protect for Noah. Brooke stood. Dad was sick. Claire could have filled his head with anything. I had never seen that letter until after you endangered my child, I said. Vanessa let the prepared deed fall onto the table. So what? You keep everything while we drown? Daniel inhaled slowly. His voice was sad, not triumphant. I keep my wife, my son, and the responsibility Dad gave me. Your debts are not my inheritance. Samuel explained that the documented pattern of pressure and harassment activated the trust protections. The lake house and Noah's education fund could no longer be negotiated, pledged, or distributed for Vanessa's or Brooke's benefit. Any new approach would be added to a record that already included the false child welfare report, the clinic incident, the waterfront assault, and the allergen exposure. Vanessa surged to her feet. This is that woman's fault. Since she came along, you stopped being our brother. Daniel stepped in front of me. Since Claire came along, I had a family to love. You decided to attack it. That was when the second reversal arrived. Margaret reached into her purse and removed her phone. I have something too. Everyone looked at her. Her hands trembled so badly she needed 2 attempts to unlock the screen. After the birthday, Vanessa came to my condo. She said that if Daniel didn't sign, they would file reports until a judge took Noah away for a while. She said Daniel would beg for peace. I told myself she was angry, but I was frightened enough to record her. Vanessa went. Still. The voice from the phone filled the room, clean and unmistakable. A terrified father will hand over any house. Brooke began to cry for real. Her face collapsed rather than arranged itself. I didn't know you would go that far. Shut up, Vanessa hissed. You wanted the money as much as I did. Margaret sank into a chair. Forgive me, Daniel. I wanted to believe these were arguments between siblings. I preferred making you feel guilty to admitting what they were doing. Daniel did not hug her. My son needed a grandmother, not a mediator. But the meeting had one more truth to surrender. Mason had sent Daniel an email the night before. He wrote from a school account because Vanessa monitored his phone. He admitted that his mother told him to push Noah into the shallow edge, promising the adults would pull him out immediately. He had not known how cold the water was or that Noah could not swim well in heavy clothes. Vanessa had also told him to place the candy beneath the truck. Mason claimed he resisted until she threatened to send him to live with his father, whom she had spent years teaching him to fear. He attached a voice memo. In it, Vanessa rehearsed the story he was supposed to tell. Noah ran, Noah slipped, Mason tried to help. Then she told him that once the house sold, they would be rich enough that nobody could boss them around again. That third reversal changed the room. Mason was not simply the cruel older cousin I had wanted to hate. He was another child Vanessa had weaponized. Where is he now? I asked. For the first time, Vanessa looked afraid. With a friend. Which friend? Daniel asked. She would not answer. Samuel called the sheriff's non-emergency line and Mason's father. Within an hour, deputies confirmed Mason was safe at a teammate's home. He had left after Vanessa discovered the email draft and smashed his phone. His father drove from Riverside to meet him. The community security officers escorted Vanessa and Brooke from our property. There were no cheers. No one poured champagne or traded victorious smiles. The deed lay and signed on the table, and the lake beyond the windows was painfully calm. After the officers left with Vanessa and Brooke, Margaret remained at the dining table. Her recording had cracked the plan open, but it had not erased her role in making it possible. For months she had carried private complaints from one house to another, softening threats into misunderstandings and translating boundaries into cruelty. She had not pushed Noah or hidden the candy. She had helped create a family in which Vanessa assumed no line would stay drawn. When did you know about the debts? Daniel asked her. Margaret stared at the grain of the table. Last spring. Vanessa said it was temporary. She needed your father to guarantee one loan, and he refused. Did you know she was bringing buyers to our driveway? She said she wanted to understand the value in case all three of you chose to sell. There was never an all three. Dad left it to me. Margaret flinched at the firmness in his voice. For most of his life, he had wrapped truth in enough softness that other people could pretend not to hear it. I thought if you shared some of it, everyone would calm down. You knew the price of peace because Vanessa told you. You just expected me to pay it. Margaret looked at me as if I might rescue her from the conversation. In the past, I might have done it for Daniel's sake. That afternoon, I remained silent. She admitted that Brooke had used her phone to call child welfare. She claimed she had not known the purpose until after the call began, but she had not ended it. Vanessa had supplied the language: unstable mother, violent home, traumatized child, unsecured waterfront. Margaret had heard each lie and told herself an investigation would settle the dispute. When the investigator left our house without removing Noah, Margaret felt relieved rather than ashamed. You gambled with where my child would sleep, I said. I never believed they would take him. Then the report was either useless or malicious. Which explanation would you prefer? She pressed a tissue to her mouth. I don't have one. Daniel asked her to leave. He did not say forever, and he did not promise another conversation. Samuel walked her to her car while I gathered the unsigned deed, the tablet, and the copies of Walter's letter. The house was so quiet that the refrigerator motor sounded like machinery in a factory. Daniel went upstairs to Noah's empty room. My sister had texted a photograph of him eating pizza on her couch, safe and grinning, but the sight of his neatly made bed undid Daniel. He sat on the rug beside the toy chest and covered his face. I diagnosed a coercive parent last month, he said. I recognized the child's fear. I documented everything. I protected a family I had met twice, and I couldn't see what was happening in my own house. I sat beside him. You saw pieces. They trained you to doubt what the pieces meant. Noah told us Mason pushed him. I should have believed the scale of it immediately. You did believe him. After he hit the water. After the slap. After the messages. How many times did you have to stand alone before I called it protection? It would have been easy to absolve him completely because I loved him and because he had finally chosen us. But easy comfort was one of the habits that brought us there. Too many, I said. I forgive you. That doesn't mean it was enough. He nodded. The answer hurt, but it did not make him defensive. That was the first sign that the change in him would last. We picked Noah up after dinner. He ran into Daniel's arms, then immediately asked whether the bad meeting was over. Children hear danger in adult euphemisms even when they do not know the details. It's over for tonight, Daniel said. Aunt Vanessa and Aunt Brooke are not coming to our house again. Is Mason coming? Not right now. Mason did something wrong, but grown-ups told him to do it. Other grown-ups are helping him get safe too. Noah leaned back to study his father. Did he put the peanut under my truck? Daniel glanced at me. We had planned to wait for his therapist before discussing it, but lies had already occupied too much space in this family. Yes, I said. His mom told him to. You did nothing to make that happen. Noah's face tightened. Maybe he thought she would stop loving him. The insight stunned me. Noah understood in one sentence what the adults had spent months refusing to name. Maybe, I said. But love should never make a child hurt another child to keep it. That night he asked us to check under every birthday toy in his room. We opened boxes, examined wrappers, and read labels until there was nothing left to inspect. At 2 in the morning I found him standing in the hallway with the dump truck held away from his body. Can we throw it out? We put it in the outside trash together. I did not tell him that objects were innocent or try to reclaim the gift. A 6-year-old did not owe anyone a lesson in symbolism. He needed to know that danger could leave when he asked. The next morning, Deputy Harris came to photograph the wrapper and collect our statements. He was careful with Noah, speaking to him in the sunroom while the child therapist joined by video. Noah described the candy, the lake, and Mason's words. When the deputy asked what Vanessa did after he fell, Noah said, she watched through her phone. That sentence stayed with me. Vanessa had spent the entire campaign turning real life into selected frames. She recorded Daniel's reaction but not her son's shove. Brooke recorded my hand but not Vanessa striking Noah. They understood that an image did not need to be false if you controlled where it began. We gave Deputy Harris the unedited camera files. The dock system had captured sound faintly. A technician increased the volume enough to hear Vanessa tell Mason, now, before they cut the cake. The words were not perfectly clear, but Mason's recording and email gave them context. The candy was harder. The wrapper carried no useful prints, and an allergen was not illegal by itself. Intent would have to be built from messages, witness accounts, the child's statement, and pattern. I want to be honest, the deputy said. Real cases are not television. Evidence that feels obvious to a family can still be contested. I don't need television, Daniel replied. I need them kept away from my son. Samuel's first petition for a temporary protective order was granted for Noah and me but required another hearing to determine the full scope around Daniel's clinic. Vanessa's attorney described the conflict as an inheritance dispute inflated by an overprotective mother. He suggested the candy might have been intended for an adult and that the dock video showed ordinary horseplay. For 9 days, every unknown vehicle on our road made my pulse race. I moved my desk from the windows. Daniel slept lightly and checked the camera alerts before getting out of bed. Noah began refusing to walk past the dock unless one of us held his hand. Then a fourth piece of truth surfaced, quieter than the recordings and just as important. One of Vanessa's former assistants, Priya Shah, contacted Samuel after seeing a social media post in which Vanessa called herself the victim of a property theft by marriage. Priya had managed files for both failed developments. She possessed emails showing that Vanessa had promised a private lender she would secure my family's Arrowhead asset as collateral even though she never owned it. The promise was dated 6 weeks before Walter died. In a later email, when the lender demanded proof, Vanessa wrote that her brother was sentimental and could be induced to sign if the family created enough pressure. She estimated a sale within 6 months. The campaign against us had not grown spontaneously from grief. It had been part of her debt strategy before we ever packed a box. Priya agreed to provide authenticated copies because Vanessa had blamed her for missing funds and threatened her career. Samuel cautioned us not to treat her as a perfect savior. She had overlooked questionable paperwork until it affected her personally. But imperfect witnesses can still tell the truth. At the protective order hearing, the judge reviewed the dock footage, Vanessa's direct demand to transfer the house, Margaret's recording, Mason's statement, and the business emails. Vanessa sat at the opposite table in navy blue, looking composed until Priya's declaration was summarized. Then she turned toward Brooke with an expression that said she was already searching for someone else to blame. The judge did not decide every disputed allegation. She did not need to. She found a credible pattern of harassment tied to demands for property and a specific risk of continued contact. The order covered our home, Noah's school, my sister's address, and Daniel's clinic for 3 years. Vanessa was prohibited from using third parties to contact us. Brooke accepted a separate stipulated order rather than contest the evidence. Outside the courthouse, reporters were not waiting. There was no crowd and no cinematic applause. People hurried past with parking receipts and paper cups. Daniel stood in the sun, read the stamped pages once, and exhaled. I thought winning would feel bigger, he said. Safety is allowed to feel quiet. The trust dispute resolved soon after. Because Vanessa's emails predated Walter's death and explicitly targeted the house, Samuel concluded that the protective clause had been triggered beyond reasonable challenge. A neutral trustee replaced Margaret in any discretionary decisions. Vanessa and Brooke retained only distributions Walter had made. Unconditional, they could never reach the house or Noah's fund. That distinction mattered to Daniel. His father had not tried to leave his daughters destitute. He had simply prevented their choices from consuming what belonged to a child. Vanessa's former lender filed its own action over her representations. Her ex-husband obtained temporary primary custody of Mason, later converted to a longer arrangement after evaluation. Brooke cooperated with investigators, admitting she made the clinic scene and participated in the false report because Vanessa promised to clear her housing debt after the sale. Cooperation did not make her harmless, but it ended the fiction that Claire had invented a family conspiracy. The consequences unfolded slowly, the way real consequences do. The sheriff's department investigated the dock incident and the allergen exposure. Child welfare reviewed the use of a false report. Vanessa's ex-husband petitioned for an emergency custody modification using Mason's email and recording. Daniel's clinic issued a written statement supporting him and banned Brooke from the property. Our attorney secured the protective order covering our home, Noah's school, and Daniel's workplace. I will not turn this story into a legal lecture. Some accusations were difficult to prove beyond intent. Some actions led to civil findings rather than dramatic arrests. But the record became strong enough that they could no longer approach us without consequences. The trust protection held. The false report became evidence of harassment. The clinic stood beside Daniel. Noah's school learned exactly who could collect him and what to do if anyone else appeared. The house stopped feeling like a battlefield. Healing did not happen at the same speed for all of us. Noah developed nightmares about falling through black water. A child therapist helped him name the difference between danger and memory. We enrolled him in swimming lessons at an indoor pool where the instructor never touched him without warning. For the first month, he sat on the edge with his feet in the water. Daniel sat beside him and rolled up scrub pants after work. On the day Noah finally floated, he stared at the ceiling and laughed. Daniel began therapy too. He learned that being the family peacemaker had never actually produced peace. It had merely trained everyone to hand him the cost of their choices. He practiced sentences that sounded simple and felt revolutionary. No. That doesn't work for us. I'm ending this conversation. Your emergency is not automatically my responsibility. I had work of my own. I replayed the Christmas slap and hated the version of myself caught in Brooke's clip. The fact that Vanessa engineered the moment did not make my hand harmless. I apologized to Noah for using violence in front of him. I told him adults could be right about a boundary and wrong about how they defended it. But Aunt Vanessa hit me first, he said. Yes. And I should have taken you away and gotten help. Protecting you means teaching you better than what she taught Mason. He considered this with the grave attention children give to rules they may need later. So we can be mad and still choose? Exactly. Margaret asked to see him 4 months later. We met at a cafe in Pasadena, not at the lake house. She brought a photo album of Walter and a plain apology without excuses. I don't deserve for you to forget, she said. I only want to learn how not to fail him again. Noah turned the pages until he found Walter standing on the dock in faded swim trunks. Did Grandpa throw rocks in the lake too? Margaret cried. All the time. He claimed he could make them skip 9 times, but I never saw more than 7. We did not open the door all the way. We left a narrow space with rules. Visits happened in public. Margaret could not carry messages from either daughter. She could not photograph Noah or discuss the legal case. Trust would be measured in months of behavior, not tears. To her credit, she obeyed. Mason moved in with his father and began counseling. His apology to Noah came as a handwritten letter reviewed by both therapists. He did not ask to be forgiven. He wrote that he had pushed Noah, that it was wrong, and that being afraid of his mother did not erase the fear he caused. Noah drew a small rocket at the bottom and asked me to mail it back. The boys did not reunite, but hatred did not become another inheritance. Vanessa sold her condo to cover part of her debts. Her brokerage suspended her after complaints related to the failed developments surfaced. Brooke moved in with a friend and stopped sending messages when she understood there would be no money and no secret channel through Margaret. I never enjoyed watching them fall. Peace did not come from their suffering. It came from watching my husband stop running to hold up people who enjoyed seeing him exhausted. That summer, we repaired the dock. I wanted to tear it out, but Noah's therapist advised us not to let one terrible moment decide the shape of the whole property. We hired a carpenter to raise the rail, install a self-locking gate, and add a bright orange life ring cabinet. Noah chose the paint for a bench beside it. He picked blue because, he said, blue can be water, but it can also be sky. The work uncovered a metal box beneath a loose floorboard in Walter's study. It contained no secret fortune or dramatic confession, only receipts, fishing licenses, snapshots, and cassette tapes labeled in his careful handwriting. Daniel borrowed a player from an older nurse at the clinic. Most tapes were ordinary: Walter testing a recorder, leaving reminders about lumber, interviewing the children for a school project. Then we heard a 14-year-old Daniel say he planned to become a doctor because doctors fix things people could not fix alone. Walter's voice answered, "Just remember, Danny, fixing isn't the same as carrying. Some folks hand you a broken chair, then sit on your back while you repair it." Daniel stopped the tape. "He tried to tell me," he said. "Maybe he knew you would need to hear it twice." We listened to the rest on the deck. Young Vanessa argued about whose turn it was to clean fish. Brooke sang half a commercial jingle. Margaret laughed in the background. The people on the tape were not monsters. That made the grief more complicated, not less. Vanessa had once been a girl who hated fish scales. Brooke had once adored her brother. Harm did not require us to rewrite every good memory as false. It required us to stop using good memories as payment for present danger. Daniel began taking Noah to the lake at sunrise, first just to sit on the new bench. They counted ducks and practiced throwing the life ring onto the grass. Later they wore matching life jackets and walked to the end of the dock. Noah would touch the rail, announce that it was locked, and come back. Each trip was his choice. One August morning, he asked to ride in Walter's old aluminum boat. We checked the motor, packed emergency medication in a waterproof case, and stayed close to shore. Noah sat between us, solemn with responsibility, until a fish jumped beside the bow. He laughed so hard he nearly dropped his hat. "The lake said hello," he declared. On shore, Daniel turned away to hide tears. I let him. Joy can hurt when it returns to a place fear occupied. My work changed too. For months I had struggled to design anything that required trust. Every client revision sounded like criticism, every unexpected email tightened my chest. I finally told my largest client that our family had survived a crisis and I needed a lighter schedule. I expected professionalism at best. Instead, she moved a launch date and sent Noah a set of allergen-safe art supplies. The gesture reminded me that asking for accommodation was not manipulation. Healthy people could hear a need without turning it into a debt. Daniel reduced one clinic evening per week. He used the time for therapy and later joined a support group for adults from coercive families. The first night he almost stayed in the parking lot. When he returned, he told me that 8 strangers had described versions of the same bargain: surrender. Money, time, access, or dignity, and call the surrender love. "I always thought our family was uniquely complicated," he said. "Complicated can be a word people use when the simpler word scares them." "Abusive," he said, testing it. I nodded. Naming it did not erase his love for his sisters. Some days he missed Brooke's terrible jokes or the way Vanessa used to defend him from bullies in middle school. He kept their numbers blocked anyway. A boundary did not have to wait until affection died. That was one of the hardest truths he learned. Margaret's public visits became steadier. She arrived on time, followed food rules without commentary, and never asked when she could return to the house. Once, Noah had a mild asthma flare at the cafe. Margaret froze when I reached for his inhaler, then followed my directions exactly. Afterward she said, "I used to think rules meant you didn't trust us. Now I understand they mean he trusts you." It was the first apology she made through changed behavior rather than words. Mason's father sent occasional updates through the attorneys. Mason was doing better in school. He had joined a robotics club and stopped asking to return to his mother. Vanessa was allowed supervised calls, which she often used to complain about the court. Mason learned to end the call when she blamed him for the case. Daniel told me that courage sometimes looked less like confronting a villain and more like a 12-year-old pressing a red button. We did not make Noah responsible for Mason's redemption. When he asked whether they would ever play together again, we said maybe, when both boys were older and their therapists believed it was safe. Forgiveness was not a scheduled visit. Compassion did not require access. As fall reached the mountains, cedar needles covered the path to the water. I watched Daniel teach Noah to sweep them from the deck. Noah complained after 3 minutes, and Daniel told him that belonging to a home meant helping care for it. Then he added, "But it never means you have to suffer to earn your place." That distinction became the rule beneath all our other rules. On the anniversary of Walter's death, we carried the old cassette player to the deck and played his recordings while the sun went down. Daniel cooked the chili his father used to make, far too spicy for Noah, who ate grilled cheese instead. We did not invite conflict into the evening by pretending the family was whole. We honored the parts that had been real: Walter's patience, the house he built, the boy Daniel had been before responsibility became a trap. Noah placed 3 smooth stones beside Walter's photograph and said, "One was for Grandpa, one for the lake, and one for the brave part of Dad." Daniel held him for a long time. Grief no longer demanded that he reopen a dangerous door. It could sit beside gratitude without controlling it. That night taught us that protecting our future did not require burning every bridge to our past. it required knowing which bridges led home and which only led back into the same fire. The following year, Noah asked for a small birthday. We invited 6 children from school, hired a teacher to run a cardboard rocket workshop, and set a table with food that was safe for him. Every package stayed sealed until Daniel or I checked it. No one teased us about the rule. Before the guests arrived, Daniel mounted a wooden sign on the deck. He had sanded and painted it himself after midnight for 3 weeks. Noah's Lake House no one has to earn a place here. Our son read it twice and wrapped both arms around Daniel's waist. Is this house really ours forever? Daniel knelt until they were eye level. This house is where mom and dad keep you safe. That part is forever. The party filled the rooms with paper fins, tape, and shrieking countdowns. Rockets leaned against furniture. Frosting appeared on the stair rail. At sunset, the children stood on the lawn launching their creations into a warm breeze, and Noah's flew the farthest. He ran after it without once looking over his shoulder. That night, after he fell asleep, Daniel and I walked to the dock. The water was silver under the moon. A year earlier, the same view had felt like evidence that our life could be taken. Now it was simply water again. I lost my sisters, Daniel said. You lost the lie that you had to let them hurt you to keep them. He took my hand. Dad was right. My kindness needed a door. And a lock. He smiled, then looked toward the window above the deck where our son slept. And someone worth closing it for. I came to that house believing the lake would be the scenery of our new life. Instead, it became the mirror that forced us to see what love was and what it was not. Blood can call itself family while trying to pull you under. Guilt can sound like loyalty. Patience can become permission when the wrong people are measuring how much pain you will absorb. Real family is the one that jumps into cold water. It removes danger from a child's hands. It tells the truth even when truth breaks an old picture. And sometimes, after years of confusing goodness with surrender, real love finally learns to say no.